Former USA citizens now living in European countries, what minor cultural change was the hardest for you to adjust to? Dutch birthday parties, having to kiss everyone in the room upon arrival and departure, and spending the event sitting in a circle eating oddly seasoned nuts. Moved to the UK in 2014. The British are emotionally different, not as gregarious and open as Americans. Being here a while now, I've learned that once you make a British friend, they're your friend forever. But for the first year or so it was quite lonely. I felt like no one liked me, which wasn't the case at all. They just don't show it, and they're awkward and bone dry all the time. I now love this, and have great affection for my adopted countrymen. It's funny you say that, as I moved to the US from the UK 2 years ago. I find Americans to be nice on the surface and really friendly. However, I find it all superficial. But if you manage to get through that layer, they're a friend for life. I love where I live in France. And I've now been here many years, but I get annoyed how hard it is to find info about local cultural events online. I don't live in a big city, but I live in a very family-friendly touristy town, and have to rely on mostly word of mouth, or picking up flyers in random places, to know what's going on. It makes it harder to make spontaneous plans, in my opinion. Waiters, and service people in general, not being proactive, or dropping by just to check on you. Even though I know it's what I'm supposed to do, I still feel rude having to flag someone down, to order or ask for the check. My first date living in Europe did not go well. What made it worse was the 2 hours I waited for the damn check. Lol, you have to ask, otherwise the check will never come. It's rude to interrupt diners and rush them here. I've never been a US citizen, but I lived there for some time. When I came back to Europe, my homeland of Poland, I couldn't get used to that smiling to random people on the street or just casually starting small talks with people is not a thing you do here. I got many weird stares. I'm from the northeastern United States, New York, but moved down to the southeast. The southeastern states are notorious for being nice to strangers. They go as far as to giving a small wave to some random person driving down your street. I went back to New York a few months ago to visit friends, and I was walking down the street with my friend and her dog, and I had to stop myself from doing the wave to passing cars. It's not a thing in New York, at least the part of the state I'm from, but I've lived in the South so long it's become a thing. Going grocery shopping every day. If you're in a city and have no car, you gotta lug whatever you buy with you. It's also just normal to swing by the supermarket every day, I think. Also, everything, and I mean everything, is closed on Sundays. Everyone eats next to nothing by American standards. People don't gorge themselves, so sometimes it was quite daunting to go round someone's house on the weekend and all they have until supper is tea and a tiny cucumber sandwich. Or order a coffee and get a tiny espresso. Don't get me wrong, I love these things, but I was raised with a scarcity mindset, so I had to unlearn those habits. Tea and a tiny cucumber sandwich. Went to visit my grandparents in England and this was all they had as well. My dad had to sneak us an extra couple of biscuits, but got caught out by his mom who lectured him like he was still 7 years old. Currently in UK for the last 4 years. Walking everywhere and a lot of people don't have driver's licenses, which is weird for me coming from South Carolina and now living in a large city. Definitely the humor and the way people joke. Like no one will actually say they're kidding, and I always feel like I have to guess. The sarcasm is strong, so sometimes I'm just not sure. Especially being in Scotland. Also all the tax being included in the price. You actually pay what the ticketed price is. No more adding extra for each item you put in your shopping basket. What? Like no one will actually say they're kidding. Well, of course not. That kills the joke. I have lived in Malta for over 3 months now. Pointer things I miss from the US. Ice. Free water and refills at restaurants. American junk food like Cheez-Its. The vast variety of restaurants available in the US. And pharmacies just have drugs. And not tons of other crap that CVS and Walgreens have. For me, it was the waste disposal and separation system. In the US, all I really had to do was separate the trash from the recycling and put 2 bins out on a curb each week. But when I moved to Germany, I had to separate everything into plastics, paper, cartons, cans, cardboard, non-recyclable waste, organic waste, glass, etc. Then, I had to make like 3 stops throughout the city to get rid of all of it. I'd have to stop by the nearest set of neighborhood recycling bins, Wurtstoffenseln, out on the street, to dispose of most of my recyclables. Then I had to go to the small neighborhood supermarket to get rid of any batteries and plastic bottles. And finally I had to go to the actual waste management center to dispose of things like electronics and such. I literally had to look up a guide published by the US Army garrison in Stuttgart every time I took out the trash, just so I didn't accidentally throw something in the wrong bin. Not a European country, but living in Japan, one thing that drives me totally up the wall is that people don't open a bag of chips from the top. They open it along the side and use chopsticks to grab the chips. I remember I saw a coworker eating hot Cheetos with chopsticks, so she wouldn't get her keyboard dirty. I looked at her like she's some supreme alien species came to teach us, stupid earthlings, infinite wisdom. Still a US citizen, but I've traveled and lived in Europe for work for about 1/4 of my professional career. So I hope I qualify. One of the more difficult cultural quirks was having to sit at a table with strangers when going out to eat. I worked in Germany for 6 months a few years ago, and, while it makes sense from an efficiency standpoint, it's damn awkward when you're not a social butterfly. Also, the prevalent use of partner when referring to your opposite sex took me a while to stop assuming they're gay or lesbian. Funny enough, I now mostly use partner to refer to my girlfriend now that I'm back stateside, and I get people making the same assumption about me. No free water in many countries in restaurants. France is a noticeable exception. And no free public toilets, even in some stores. Paying a few cents, or up to €2, to use the bathroom is wild. And smokers everywhere. Smoking in front of kids, in train stations, old men smoking cigars and pipes on the street. Very smelly and annoying at times. Not being able to pet people's dogs. People in the States were usually so friendly about it. I'm not saying all Europeans, but the ones I've come in contact with look like they are going to knife me if I try to ask to pet their dog. I've been told that it is the same in China. You can touch their kids, but stay away from the dog. Moved to Prague from Atlanta. Honestly, feeling so free was the hardest. Safety? I feel safer alone drunk on a Friday night at 3 AM on a dark street than I did in the US on my couch. Hookers? Legal. Safer and cheaper. Weed/other drugs? Buy 'em in a bar. Police don't care. It's a small fine if you're caught, but they don't even do that. Healthcare? $98 a month, 100% coverage. Mental health and previous conditions included. Not needing a car/car insurance/car payment/petrol, because Europe actually has functioning public transport. Haven't seen a gun in 2 years. Despite not speaking the language, people interact with each other more here, and you're much more likely to make friends with a stranger in public, and not worry about being cut into pieces. People take their voting and civil duties much more seriously. Honestly, the hardest thing has been remembering to bring my own bag when I go shopping. Everything else has been wonderfully pleasant. I think because they lost their freedoms so long under USSR rule, they cling to them and fight for every little thing. Maternity/paternity leave, 6 weeks vacation, mandatory holidays for businesses so workers can have family time. Tax rate for me is about 13%. Compared to 34 back home. Come visit Prague, I'll smoke you out and show you around. I'm Czech, and I feel like you were talking about completely different country than the one where I spent my whole life, haha. He said he doesn't speak Czech, so he's probably living in a kind of expat bubble. Police where I live don't carry guns and are, for the most part, way more friendly than their American counterparts. I actually talked to one of them about not being nervous around them, and he said it was because they didn't carry guns. It's taken me a while to adjust to this actually, because when I lived in the US and was near cops, it would make me nervous as hell, even though I didn't do anything bad. It's never been the sidearm that's kept me from talking with police officers here in the US. It's often the attitude. There are plenty that are friendly and personable, but there are also plenty that have the respect my authority attitude. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.